A hidden world lies beneath the quiet ponds of rural China. In 1992, a group of farmers pumped the water from what they thought was a simple pool in Longyou County. They did not find fish, they found steps, they found walls, they found the entrance to a colossal, man-made cavern, a space so vast and so precisely carved it defies all logic. This is the mystery of the Longyou caves. By the end of this, you will understand why this discovery has completely rewritten what we thought was possible for ancient engineering. We are going to explore who could have built this, how they did it without leaving a single trace, and what terrifying or glorious purpose this underground city was meant to serve. What does it mean when the earth itself holds a secret this large? The man who led the effort was a local farmer named Wu Anai. For generations, the people of Longyou County knew of these ponds, calling them bottomless because they never seemed to dry up, even in the worst droughts. Wu Anai and his neighbors saw them not as ancient mysteries, but as a practical resource. They pooled their money, a considerable sum for the time, to rent a water pump. Their goal was simple. They would drain one of the ponds, catch the fish they were sure were inside, and make a profit. It was a straightforward plan born of local necessity, not archaeological curiosity. For 24 hours, the pump churned. The water level began to drop, but no fish surfaced. Instead, as the murky water receded, something impossible emerged from the gloom. First, they saw steps, not rough, natural stone, but smooth, evenly spaced steps carved directly into the sandstone. Then walls appeared, immense vertical planes meeting at perfect 90-degree angles. The villagers stood at the edge, staring into a hole that was now clearly not a pond at all, but a gigantic man-made entrance. The initial reaction was not excitement, but a deep, superstitious fear. They had not found a treasure, they had opened a door. What lay beyond that threshold was a silence so profound it felt like a physical presence. The scale of what they were seeing was incomprehensible. This was not a small cave or a burial chamber. The opening alone was large enough to drive several trucks through side by side, and as they would soon learn, this was only the first room. The true magnitude of the space only became clear as they ventured inside, their flashlights cutting through a darkness untouched for centuries. This cavern, now known as Cave 1, is a single, colossal room. Its floor area spans over 2,000 square meters. To put that into terms you can feel, it is larger than 2 Olympic swimming pools placed side by side, or roughly half the size of an American football field. You could fit several basketball courts inside with room to spare, and it is not a low, cramped space. The ceiling soars over 30 meters above the floor, a height equivalent to a 10-story building. This immense roof is not held up by the raw stone of a natural cave. It is supported by massive, evenly spaced pillars, each one carved directly from the living rock of the floor below. These pillars are not crude posts. They are engineered structures tapering slightly as they rise, designed to distribute the weight of the mountain above them. The first and most immediate realization for anyone who steps inside is an overwhelming sense of order. Every surface you can see, from the floor to the soaring ceiling to the vast walls, is covered in the same precise parallel markings. These are not the random scratches of natural erosion. They are the unmistakable, uniform tool marks of a master stone carver, chiseled with a rhythmic, almost mechanical consistency across thousands upon thousands of square meters. The villagers did not just find a hole in the ground. They had stumbled into an underground cathedral, a titanic feat of engineering that felt less like an ancient ruin and more like a grand, purposeful hall waiting for its occupants to return. Standing in that cavern, the sheer weight of the mountain above you feels held at bay by pure human will. The pillars are the key to this impossible space. They are not separate blocks brought in and placed. Each one is an integral part of the floor, carved from the same solid sandstone bedrock and left standing as the material around it was painstakingly removed. Think of it like this. You have a single gigantic block of wood. To create a pillar, you would carve away everything that is not the pillar. That is exactly what the builders did, but with stone and on a scale that is almost unimaginable. These pillars are arranged in a precise grid-like pattern, evenly spaced to create a forest of stone that perfectly distributes the colossal load of the ceiling. The walls are not vertical. They slope inward at a consistent, calculated angle, a design that inherently increases stability, preventing collapse, and the ceiling itself is a single, flat plane, maintaining the same exact height across the entire 2,000 square meter expanse. This is not the irregular, undulating roof of a natural cave. This is the level, finished ceiling of a grand hall. The engineering challenge here is not just about artistry. It is a problem of pure physics and volume. To create this one cavern, the builders had to remove an estimated 36,000 cubic meters of solid stone. To visualize that, imagine a single dump truck. A large modern dump truck might carry about 10 cubic meters of material. You would need 3,600 truckloads to haul away all the rubble from Cave 1. Now picture doing that without a single truck, without dynamite, without power tools. Every single cubic meter of that stone had to be chipped, chiseled, and hammered out by hand, then somehow transported up and out of the deepening pit. The logistics are a nightmare that stretches credibility. Where did all that rubble go? There is no giant mound of debris anywhere near the site. It simply vanished, as if the mountain was hollowed out and the evidence was erased. This level of precise, large-scale stone removal speaks of a project that was planned with architectural foresight and executed with a degree of organization we typically associate with modern construction firms, not an unknown ancient culture. The pillars are not decorative. They are the bones of the mountain, deliberately left behind to keep the entire structure from crashing down. Who possessed the knowledge to calculate their placement so perfectly that the ceiling has not sagged an inch in over 2 millennia? But the stone itself holds the builder's most personal signature. Every single surface in the cavern, from the soaring ceiling to the vast walls and even the massive pillars, is covered in a mesmerizing, uniform pattern. These are not random scratches. They are deliberate, parallel chisel marks, each one carved at a precise 60-degree angle to the surface. The pattern is so consistent, so rhythmic, it feels less like manual labor and more like a grand, artistic text written directly onto the stone. If you run your hand along the wall, you would feel the ridges and grooves, a texture that covers thousands upon thousands of square meters without a single break in its disciplined rhythm. This is the visual heartbeat of the entire complex. So what are these marks? Are they just the inevitable byproduct of the carving process, the simple evidence of tools meeting stone? Perhaps, but that explanation feels incomplete. The consistency is too perfect. In ancient quarries or other carved structures, tool marks are often haphazard, overlapping, showing the different strokes and angles of individual workers. Here, it is as if every worker followed the same exact instruction. Chisel at a 60-degree angle, maintain parallel lines, cover everything. This suggests a standardized technique, a shared method passed down and enforced with remarkable discipline. Could they be decorative, a form of symbolic language meant to be read in the flickering light of ancient torches? Some researchers have proposed they might be a type of symbolic patterning, a uniform texture that held cultural or even spiritual significance, transforming a functional space into a sacred one. But the most compelling theory is also the most practical. These parallel grooves may be the key to the entire construction process. A chisel struck at that specific angle is incredibly efficient for prying off large, flat sheets of sandstone. The consistent pattern suggests the builders were not just carving out space. They were systematically peeling the mountain apart in controlled layers, using the grooves as guidelines to remove stone in uniform panels. This single repeating mark, therefore, might be the ultimate clue. It is not just decoration. It is the fossilized evidence of an assembly line of stone removal, a lost technology so effective it allowed them to hollow out a mountain with the precision of a modern machine shop. The discovery of that first cavern was not an isolated event. It was a key turning a lock, revealing that the door led not to a single room, but to an entire hidden floor of the world. As word spread and more ponds were drained, the true scale of the undertaking began to dawn on everyone involved. They did not find one cave, they found an entire network. To date, at least 24 of these colossal man-made caverns have been confirmed in a concentrated area of less than 1 square kilometer. Some sources even suggest the number could be as high as 36. Think about that for a moment. We are no longer discussing a single, magnificent hall. We are looking at what appears to be an underground district, a planned complex carved with deliberate intent. The layout of these caves adds profound layers to the puzzle. They are not randomly scattered. Some sit side by side, like neighboring apartments in a subterranean block, their walls running parallel just a few meters apart. Others are stacked with caves on multiple levels, suggesting a vertical design that utilized the entire depth of the sandstone formation. The precision of their placement raises an urgent and haunting question. Are these 24 caverns separate, independent projects, or are they the exposed fragments of a single, interconnected underground city, a vast labyrinth where one chamber flowed into the next? The narrow walls separating them hint strongly at connectivity. Perhaps doorways or corridors once linked them, passages that have since collapsed or been deliberately sealed, leaving us with only these isolated, breathtaking voids. Now let the scale of that sink in. If a single cave required the removal of 36,000 cubic meters of stone, then 24 caves represent a volume of removed material approaching 1 million cubic meters. That is a mountain of rubble that has simply disappeared from the landscape. The logistical problem has just been multiplied by 24. This was not a weekend project for a small village. This was an industrial-scale operation of staggering ambition, one that would have required a vast, organized workforce, advanced planning, and a purpose so compelling it justified what must have been generations of labor. The mystery is no longer just about how they built one room. It is about why they built an invisible city and what kind of society could hide an effort of this magnitude so completely that history forgot it entirely. 1 million cubic meters of stone is not just a number, it is a physical reality that defies common sense. To visualize what the builders of Longyou achieved, picture the Great Pyramid of Giza. The volume of stone removed from these caves is estimated to be between 1 and 2 million cubic meters. That is enough material to construct an entire pyramid. Someone at some point in the deep past undertook a project of that scale, not to build a monument reaching for the sky, but to secretly hollow out the earth. And then they made the evidence of their work vanish. The first and most glaring question is, where did all that rock go? You cannot simply erase a mountain. Removing that much sandstone would have created colossal mounds of debris, hills of rubble that would still be visible in the landscape today. Yet no such piles exist. There are no ancient quarries filled with matching stone nearby. The material was not used to construct a city above ground, as no local ruins match the volume or the type of sandstone. It is as if the excavated stone was pulverized into dust and scattered to the winds, or perhaps transported miles away for a purpose we cannot fathom. The logistics of moving that much material without roads, without wheels, without beasts of burden large enough to make it efficient, become a puzzle with no visible pieces. Then we must step into the darkness they worked in. How did they see? These are not shallow grottos. They are deep, windowless chambers where sunlight never reaches. The conventional answer is torches or oil lamps, but look at the ceilings and walls. They are a pristine, uniform gray. There are no patches of black soot, no smoke stains, no residue from centuries of burning fuels. If thousands of workers toiled here for generations, their primary light sources would have left a permanent mark. The absence of soot is deafening. It suggests a lighting technology we do not understand, or a work method that did not require open flame. Could they have used mirrors to channel sunlight deep underground? The precision needed for that is staggering. Or did they possess something else entirely, a way to illuminate vast spaces that left no trace? Finally, breathe the air they breathed, ventilation. As they carved deeper, they would have faced deadly pockets of stale air and dust. Without a constant flow of fresh oxygen, workers would have suffocated and lamps would have sputtered out. Yet the caves show no evidence of ventilation shafts, no chimneys cut to the surface. The air inside today is still and cool, but somehow breathable. How did they solve this fundamental engineering problem? Did they understand airflow dynamics well enough to design the cave entrances and internal shapes to create natural circulation? Each of these issues, the vanished rubble, the missing soot, the mystery of the air, forms a wall of practical impossibilities. We are not just looking at a forgotten culture. We are looking at a society that appears to have solved problems we would struggle with today, and then carefully erase the solutions. This forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. Are we missing a piece of human history? A chapter where a civilization achieved a quiet, profound mastery over stone and space, only to retreat and leave behind these silent, empty halls as their only testament. This perfect silence is also a perfect void of time. To solve the mystery of the Longyou caves, we need to answer the most fundamental question: when were they built? But the caves themselves refuse to give us a date. They are a chronological black hole, a place where time seems to have stopped, leaving any of the usual clues behind. The primary method archaeologists use to date ancient sites is radiocarbon dating. This technique measures the decay of carbon in organic materials, things like wood, bone, charcoal, or seeds. But the Longyou caves offer nothing of the sort. They are carved from solid sandstone, a mineral that contains no organic carbon to date. And inside these pristine halls, not a single artifact has been found. No broken pottery, no lost tools, no charcoal from ancient fires, no inscriptions on the walls, not even a bone fragment or a seed from a worker's meal. The floors are swept clean, the walls are bare of writing, and the only thing left behind are those endless, silent tool marks. It is as if the builders finished their work, collected every single item they brought with them, and walked out, leaving a space so deliberately empty it feels more like an abandonment than a departure. Without physical artifacts, experts have turned to the only evidence available: the tool marks themselves. By analyzing the angle, depth, and style of the chisel grooves, they can compare them to marks found in other, datable sites across Chinese history. This method is more art than science, a form of archaeological handwriting analysis, and it has led to a wildly divergent range of theories. Some researchers, looking at the sophistication of the engineering and a potential link to large-scale state projects, propose a date during the Qin dynasty, over 2,200 years ago. This was the era of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, who unified the country and launched monumental projects like the Terracotta Army and the early Great Wall. Could the Longyou caves be another staggering project from that period of immense centralized power? Other analyses suggest a much later date, perhaps only 200 or 300 years ago in the Ming or Qing dynasties. Proponents of this theory argue that the tool marks resemble those from known quarries of that later period. But this creates its own paradox. If the caves are only a few centuries old, how did such a massive, local undertaking vanish completely from local memory and written records? The village of Longyou is not that old. Someone's grandfather would have known about it. The result is a frustrating and fascinating standoff. The timeline stretches from a deep, mythical past to a surprisingly recent one, with no solid evidence to anchor it. This lack of a date doesn't just make the mystery harder to solve. it fundamentally changes the nature of every theory. If the caves are from the Qin dynasty, they represent a lost chapter of that empire's technological prowess. If they are from 500 years ago, they point to a secretive local culture with astonishing resources. The date is the keystone. Without it, the entire arch of history we try to build over the caves remains speculative, swaying in the wind of guesswork. We are left staring at a masterpiece of engineering that is utterly disconnected from time, a ghost in the machine of history that could be ancient or almost modern, and that ambiguity is perhaps the most haunting feature of all. Faced with this timeless enigma, we must build our own theories from the ground up. The first and most practical explanation seems almost too simple. Could the Longyou cave simply be a giant, ancient quarry? On the surface, the evidence is compelling. The entire complex is carved from a single, consistent layer of sandstone, a high-quality stone prized for construction. The sheer, staggering volume of removed material points to an industrial-scale extraction operation. Perhaps this was the source stone for a magnificent lost city or a grand temple complex that has long since crumbled to dust. The process of quarrying stone by carving out large, neat blocks could theoretically leave behind smooth walls and even pillars, if sections of rock were left in place to prevent collapse during the work. It is a logical, utilitarian answer, yet the moment you step inside one of these caverns, the quarry theory begins to crack under the weight of its own elegance. Have you ever seen a quarry? Even the most advanced ancient quarries are functional, chaotic places. They are rough, uneven, and focused solely on removing valuable stone as efficiently as possible. Workers would not waste a single swing of the hammer on decorative finishes. The Longyou caves are the absolute opposite of that. Every surface, from the soaring 30-meter ceiling to the vast floor, is covered in those meticulous parallel chisel marks. This uniform patterning covers tens of thousands of square meters. In a quarry, this would represent an astronomical and pointless waste of labor. Why would workers carefully texture every single inch of a wall they were only trying to dismantle? Furthermore, the architectural design is all wrong for a mine. The pillars are spaced in a precise, grid-like pattern to create a stable, open hall. In a quarry, pillars are left haphazardly, only where needed to hold up the roof for safety, not to create a grand, balanced space. The sloped walls and perfectly flat ceiling serve no extraction purpose. They serve an aesthetic and architectural one. Imagine spending generations carving a magnificent, finished cathedral, only to then knock it down to sell the bricks. It makes no economic or practical sense. If the goal was merely to harvest sandstone, the builders could have created open pit mines or rough tunnels, extracting far more material with far less effort. Instead, they invested unimaginable labor to create a series of breathtaking, finished interiors. The quarry theory answers the question of where the stone went, but it completely fails to explain why the empty space left behind is so astonishingly, deliberately grand. This was not a hole dug for material. This feels like a space created for a purpose that required awe, order, and permanence. If not a quarry, then perhaps a tomb. The sheer grandeur of the Longyou caves inevitably draws comparisons to the resting places of emperors. In Chinese tradition, a ruler's tomb was a mirror of his earthly power, a microcosmic universe designed for the afterlife. Think of the famed tomb of Qin Shi Huang, guarded by an entire terracotta army, or the sprawling, mountain-like Ming tombs near Beijing. These are statements in stone meant to project authority for eternity. The scale and precision of Longyou certainly fits that imperial profile. An emperor or a king of a lost kingdom could have commanded the labor of thousands to carve this hidden underworld. The caverns, with their towering pillars and vast, ordered spaces, feel like throne rooms and ceremonial halls sunken into the earth. They could be a secret necropolis, a city for the dead meant to remain untouched and undiscovered, far grander than any surface monument. The architectural ambition alone makes a compelling case for a royal project. Only a centralized power with immense resources could have orchestrated such a feat. The location itself, hidden beneath ponds, could be a form of deliberate concealment, protecting a sacred royal space from tomb robbers and the eyes of future generations. It is a theory that gives a majestic purpose to the overwhelming silence. Yet, the tomb theory collapses under the weight of what is not there. Walk through any known imperial tomb in China from any dynasty. What do you find? Burial goods, pottery, bronze vessels, jade ornaments, weapons, chariots, the everyday and luxurious items the ruler would need in the next world. The walls are often adorned with murals, inscriptions, or protective symbols. There is evidence of the burial itself. A sarcophagus, a burial chamber, remains. The Longyou caves have none of this. They are utterly, starkly empty. Not a single shard of pottery, not a trace of a coffin platform, not one character carved into the walls to identify the occupant or record the achievement. This is not a tomb that was robbed. Robbers leave chaos, broken artifacts, and signs of forced entry. This is a space that appears to have never been used at all. Furthermore, if this were an imperial project of such staggering scale, how could it vanish from all historical records? Chinese historians from the ancient Shiji onward meticulously documented the great works of emperors, their palaces, their canals, and their tombs. A project requiring the removal of 1 million cubic meters of stone would have been a monumental entry in any chronicle. Yet there is silence, no legend, no folk tale, no mention in any provincial or imperial record speaks of an underground palace being carved in Longyou. An emperor wanting to hide his tomb might keep it secret, but the logistics of hiding the labor of thousands for generations is a secret too large to keep. The very emptiness that makes the cave so mysterious is the same emptiness that undermines the idea of a finished tomb. We are left with a space that feels designed for a grand purpose, a purpose that either was never fulfilled or one we have not yet begun to comprehend. A purely practical mind might look at these vast, empty halls and see not a tomb but a warehouse. The sheer volume of enclosed space is perfect for storage on an imperial scale. Could the Longyou caves have been a giant, secret bunker? Imagine a secure depot for grain, reserves to weather a decade of famine, a hidden armory for an emperor's private army, or a barracks where thousands of troops could be concealed until the moment of attack. The environment supports this. Underground, the temperature remains cool and constant, ideal for preserving food or keeping metal weapons from rusting. The strategic advantage is obvious. An enemy could scour the countryside and never find the source of your strength, hidden literally beneath their feet. It is a theory born of cold logic, turning mystery into a matter of logistics and survival. Some researchers have even proposed a darker, more urgent purpose. What if the builders weren't preparing for war with another kingdom, but for a catastrophe of a different order? Could these caves be an ancient fallout shelter, a refuge carved in anticipation of a cataclysm they saw coming? A flood myth, a prophecy of celestial fire, or a memory of some past disaster could have motivated a society to literally bury itself for protection, creating a sealed ark within the earth. The scale would then make a terrible sense. You would need space for your entire people, their food, their seeds, their knowledge, to wait out the end of the world above. Yet, for all its pragmatic appeal, the bunker theory stumbles on the same exquisite detail that doomed the quarry idea. Look again at the walls. Every single surface is covered in those painstaking, uniform chisel marks. This is not just finishing, it is an obsessive, all-consuming decorative texture applied to tens of thousands of square meters. If you are building an emergency grain silo or a troop barracks, would you instruct your workers to spend perhaps half their labor carefully carving a beautiful, parallel pattern onto every ceiling beam and storage room wall? In a crisis project, time and labor are the most precious commodities. That level of ornamental finish is the hallmark of a sacred or ceremonial space, not a utilitarian one. It speaks of a purpose where the environment itself carried meaning, where the very texture of the stone was part of the experience. Furthermore, the location is not strategically ideal for a military bunker. It is not on a major frontier or overlooking a critical trade route. It is tucked away in a relatively quiet part of Zhejiang province. A secret armory is most useful near where the fighting will be, not in a remote agricultural area. And if it were a refuge from a cataclysm, where is the evidence it was ever used? Where are the storage bins, the weapon racks, the sleeping pallets? The floors are bare stone, swept cleaner than any warehouse ever left behind. The silence here doesn't feel like an abandoned storage facility. It feels like a stage set before the actors have arrived, a space waiting for a performance that never began. So we are left with a haunting contradiction. The caves have the perfect, practical form of a bunker, but they wear the intricate, ceremonial skin of a temple. This disconnect may be the most important clue of all. The silence of the caves is so profound it begs for a grander, more unsettling narrative. When every practical explanation hits a wall of impossibility, the mind drifts toward the extraordinary. This leads us to the most controversial and captivating theory of all. Could the Longyou caves be a relic from a lost civilization, a forgotten chapter of human history that predates everything we think we know about ancient China? The idea is not simply fantasy. It is built upon the very real, tangible impossibilities of the site itself. Consider the precision, the alignment of the caves, their parallel walls, their consistent angles and flat ceilings, all point to a mastery of surveying and geometry that rivals modern engineering. This is not the work of a fledgling culture finding its way. It is the signature of a society that had already perfected the art of shaping stone on a monumental scale, possibly over thousands of years of prior practice. Where is that practice? Where are their other projects, their evolution? The complete absence of any developmental stages, of any smaller, cruder prototypes in the archaeological record is deeply strange. It is as if this knowledge appeared fully formed and then vanished just as completely. This sudden appearance of advanced technique with no historical preamble is the classic hallmark of the lost civilization hypothesis. The caves feel like an artifact out of time, a single, stunning page torn from a much longer book that we have never found. The lack of any record is not just an omission. It feels like an erasure. If a known dynasty built this, even in secret, some whisper would have survived in myth, in local legend, in a corrupted folk song. The total void of memory suggests a much greater distance in time. A cataclysm so complete it severed the cultural chain connecting the builders to those who came after. This is where the theory connects to universal human stories. Every culture has its myth of a great flood, of a golden age that ended in catastrophe. The Chinese have the legend of the pre-flood era of the great Emperor Yu, who tamed the waters. The West speaks of Atlantis. These are often dismissed as allegory, but what if they are fragmented memories? Could the Longyou caves be a physical refuge from such an ancient global event? A bunker carved by a sophisticated society that saw the deluge coming. The location, deliberately hidden beneath water, takes on a new, eerie significance. It is not just hidden. It is submerged, as if designed to be protected by the very element that threatened them. The builders would not have placed their greatest work under a pond by accident. They may have chosen that specific sandstone layer because they knew it would be sealed and preserved by water, a time capsule waiting for the waters to recede and the world to begin again. Their technology, their language, their very identity could have been washed away in the catastrophe, leaving only these empty, indestructible halls as proof they ever existed. This theory is, of course, fiercely debated. Mainstream archaeology demands evidence, and a single site, no matter how baffling, is not enough to rewrite history. Critics argue it is a leap too far, that it ignores the human capacity for sudden, brilliant innovation. Yet, the hypothesis endures because it answers the emotional core of the mystery. It explains the scale, the precision, the silence, and the sheer otherworldly feeling of the place in one sweeping story. It tells us that history might be deeper and stranger than our textbooks allow, that there may be giants in our past whose footprints have faded almost to nothing, leaving only a hollow mountain as their monument. Whether true or not, this idea forces a humbling realization. We are not just looking at a puzzle from our known past. We are staring into a dark mirror, wondering if our own civilization, with all its steel and silicon, could ever leave behind a legacy as durable, as enigmatic, and as utterly silent as these caves. But the human mind, when faced with a void of evidence, will often fill it with the most extraordinary possibilities. When archaeology falls silent, mythology and speculation rush in to fill the cavernous quiet. This brings us to the most fringe, yet undeniably captivating category of theories surrounding the Longyou caves. Could the explanation lie not in a lost human civilization, but in something beyond our world entirely? Some look at the inhuman uniformity of the tool marks, the staggering precision of the engineering, and the sheer logistical nightmare of the project, and they propose a simpler, more radical answer. What if the builders were not human? The theory of extraterrestrial intervention suggests that the technology required to carve and finish these caves so perfectly did not exist on Earth at the time of their construction. Only an advanced, non-human intelligence, perhaps using tools or energy sources we cannot comprehend, could have achieved such a feat. The caves, in this view, are not a tomb or a bunker, but perhaps a landing site, a research station, or a storage facility left behind by visitors from the stars. It is a theory built entirely on the perceived impossibility of the human achievement, a leap into the cosmic to explain the earthly. On a different but equally mystical track are the local legends. The region has ancient stories of dragons, powerful beings associated with water, caves, and the underworld. Could the Longyou caves be the physical manifestation of these myths? A dragon's lair on a scale befitting a celestial beast, or a subterranean realm carved by these powerful entities? The fact that the caves were discovered underwater, the dragon's traditional element, only fuels this symbolic connection. These theories, from ancient astronauts to mythological beings, are thrilling to consider. They speak to a deep human desire for wonder, for answers that transcend the mundane limits of history. And in a way, they honor the profound mystery of the site by acknowledging that it feels otherworldly. However, as compelling as these stories are, they serve a different purpose than archaeology. They are narratives of imagination, not investigation. The moment we attribute the caves to aliens or dragons, we stop looking for human answers. We close the book on the ingenuity, the organization, and the profound cultural purpose of a real flesh and blood society that once stood where we stand. The silent, empty halls of Longyou do not need extraterrestrial architects to be miraculous. The true wonder is that they stand as a monument to what humans, with nothing but stone tools and relentless will, might have accomplished. Our search, therefore, must remain grounded in the earth, in the stone, and in the patient, frustrating work of finding a single piece of evidence that can finally begin to tell their story. The mystery of the Longyou caves is carved into the walls themselves. Those endless parallel grooves are more than a signature. They are a direct challenge, a frozen moment of labor that dares us to understand it. To solve the how, we must become the builders, if only in our minds. Modern experts have taken up that challenge, attempting to replicate the marks using tools that would have been available in antiquity. They forged chisels from iron and bronze, tools that a Qin dynasty stonemason might have recognized, and set to work on similar sandstone. The results were both revealing and deeply humbling. A single worker, using a metal chisel and a heavy hammer, could produce the characteristic 60-degree groove, but the pace was agonizingly slow. To cover just 1 square meter of wall with that dense, uniform patterning required days of relentless, focused labor. Now multiply that by the tens of thousands of square meters inside the complex. The math becomes a kind of madness. It suggests an army of carvers, thousands strong, working in shifts for decades, perhaps even centuries, on this single monstrous project. The sound must have been a permanent thunder, a cacophony of hammers ringing through the mountain that never ceased. Yet, even this staggering vision of manpower runs into a problem of quality, not just quantity. The tool marks in the caves are not just present, they are perfect. Their consistency across different walls, different chambers, and even different caves is what feels almost supernatural. How do you maintain that rhythmic, unvarying standard across generations of workers? Did a master craftsman walk the lines, inspecting every stroke? Was there a template, a guide scratched into the stone that each worker followed? Or does this point to something else entirely, a tool technology we have overlooked? The standard chisel and hammer, while capable, cannot fully explain the eerie uniformity. This has led some researchers to propose a lost or specialized tool. Imagine a multi-pronged chisel, a comb-like device made of hardened metal that could strike several parallel lines at once. Or perhaps a mechanical aid, a simple but effective jig that held a chisel at the exact same angle for every strike, turning a skilled art into a repeatable process. Such a tool would not need to be magical. It would simply need to be clever, a piece of forgotten ingenuity that transformed an impossible task into a manageable, if still monumental, operation. Without it, we are left imagining a level of discipline and shared technique that borders on the robotic. The stone holds the answer, but it speaks in a language of grooves we are still learning to read. Each mark is a whisper from a worker we will never know, a single note in a symphony of stone that has fallen silent. What were they thinking as they swung their hammers day after day, year after year, in the perpetual dark, creating a space they might never live to see finished? The stone whispers back as modern researchers moved beyond the visual and began to measure the environment of the caves. They uncovered a hidden layer of design that no one expected. The silence inside is not just an absence of sound, it is a carefully sculpted acoustic landscape. In specific chambers, something extraordinary happens. If you stand at one end of the vast hall and speak in the softest whisper, a person standing at the opposite end, over 30 meters away, can hear you with perfect, eerie clarity. Your quiet words travel across the open space as if you were standing right beside them. Yet at the same time, other sounds, like the clap of your hands or the scuff of a shoe, are strangely muted, absorbed by the textured walls. This is not a random acoustic fluke of an empty room. It is a repeatable, measurable phenomenon that points to deliberate engineering. The very shape of the caves, the angles of the walls, the placement of the pillars, and most importantly, the thousands upon thousands of parallel chisel marks covering every surface, all work together to shape the behavior of sound waves in this underground world. Those grooves are not just visual, they act as a complex diffraction, grating, scattering, and channeling sound in specific ways. The sloped walls and flat ceiling further direct and focus certain frequencies. The result is a space that can amplify a human whisper while dampening background noise, creating a channel for clear, private communication across impossible distances. This changes everything. It means the builders were not just excavators, they were acoustic architects. They understood on a profound level how sound would interact with the geometry and texture of their creation. So what purpose could such a feature serve? Imagine a ritual ceremony in the flickering torchlight. A high priest or a chanter, standing by a central pillar, could recite prayers or commands in a low, resonant voice, and that sound would be carried to every corner of the hall, enveloping the participants in a shared auditory experience that felt both intimate and divine. The space itself would become an instrument, transforming human speech into something supernatural. Alternatively, in a more practical but no less brilliant application, these acoustic properties could have served as an ancient communication system. Foremen or overseers coordinating hundreds of workers in the dim vastness could use low whispers to relay instructions without shouting, cutting through the din of hammers and chisels. The caves begin to feel less like passive halls and more like tuned devices designed for a specific sonic experience. This intentional manipulation of sound adds a devastating argument against the simple quarry theory. No one carves 1,000,000 cubic meters of stone to create perfect acoustics for a mine. This was a space meant to be heard as much as it was meant to be seen. The silence we experience today is an illusion. We are standing inside a giant stone instrument that has fallen silent, waiting for the right voice to play it once more. The manipulation of sound was not the only hidden language written into the stone. When you stand in the center of one of these vast caverns and look toward the entrance, you are looking in a specific direction. This simple fact led researchers to a profound new line of inquiry. Did the builders of Longyou orient their work with the heavens above? Could these subterranean halls, buried under a mountain and hidden by water, still hold a silent conversation with the sun, the moon, and the stars? The search for astronomical alignment is a powerful tool for understanding ancient minds. From the pyramids of Giza to the great stone circle of Stonehenge, cultures worldwide have anchored their most sacred architecture to the cosmos, using it as a calendar, a clock, and a direct link to the divine. The builders of Longyou, with their mastery of geometry and precision, would have been keenly aware of celestial movements. So, do the caves point somewhere? Initial surveys and measurements have revealed something intriguing. The main entrances of several key caves are not randomly placed. They show a distinct, recurring orientation, generally facing toward the southeast. This is not the dramatic, solstice-aligned doorway of a monument like Newgrange in Ireland, where a single shaft of sunlight pierces the darkness on one specific day. The alignment at Longyou is subtler, more integrated into the entire design of the complex. It suggests a foundational principle, not a singular theatrical effect. Why southeast? In the northern hemisphere, the southeast is the direction of the rising sun for much of the year, a symbol of rebirth, warmth, and generative power. More specifically, it aligns with the sunrise around the time of the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. For an agricultural society, the solstice was a critical turning point, the moment the sun began its return and the promise of spring was renewed. If the caves were a ceremonial center, aligning them with this solar rebirth would imbue the entire space with that symbolic power, connecting the regenerative force of the sun with whatever rituals took place in the Earth's womb. But the investigation goes beyond simple solar alignment. Some researchers have proposed correlations with specific stars or constellations that held significance in ancient Chinese astronomy, such as the stars of the Big Dipper, which were closely tied to the concept of the celestial emperor and the axis of the sky. The precise angles of the sloped walls and the placement of the massive pillars could, in theory, have been designed to frame views of certain stars from within the cave on specific nights, turning the entrance into a giant stone sighting tube. Imagine a ceremony where, on a clear, cold winter night, a particular bright star appears perfectly centered in the cave's mouth, its light glinting off the textured walls for the first time in a year. That moment would transform the cave from a room into an observatory, a place where the cosmic order was made visible and tangible. However, the evidence here is not yet definitive. Unlike a standalone stone circle on an open plain, the Longyou caves are a complex, multi-chambered network built into a hillside. Proving intentional stellar alignment is incredibly difficult, as the local horizon and the surrounding landscape have changed over millennia. The true purpose may be more holistic. The consistent southeast orientation, combined with the perfect internal geometry, points to a worldview where human creation was meant to mirror cosmic order. The caves were not just built in the earth, they were built in alignment with it and with the sky above it. This transforms our understanding of their purpose. A space aligned with celestial cycles is a space meant for events that are themselves cyclical seasonal gatherings, calendrical rituals, initiations tied to the passage of time. The acoustics allowed you to hear the sacred words. The alignment allowed you to mark the sacred moment. Together, they create an environment of total sensory ritual, a machine for generating profound experience. So while we may not have a single beam of sunlight striking an altar on the solstice, we have something perhaps more sophisticated, an entire architectural philosophy that baked the rhythms of the universe into the very bones of the mountain. The builders did not just want a big room underground, they wanted a piece of the cosmos brought down to earth and sealed in stone. That missing mountain of stone is the ghost haunting every theory. We have established the staggering scale. To carve just one of the 24 caves required removing roughly 36,000 cubic meters of solid sandstone. For the entire complex, we are talking about well over 1 million cubic meters of material. That is not a pile of dirt. That is the equivalent of a small mountain itself, a literal hill of rock that was chiseled out of the earth and then made to disappear. This is not a minor detail. It is the single greatest physical clue to the entire operation, and it is conspicuously, maddeningly absent. So where did it all go? This logistical nightmare forces us to confront several painful possibilities, each one as difficult to swallow as the next. The first and most romantic idea is that the stone was used to build something magnificent on the surface. Perhaps the builders quarried this high-quality sandstone precisely because they needed it for a grand city, a temple complex, or a palace that has since vanished, worn away by time or deliberately destroyed. The caves in this scenario were the source and the vanished city was the product. It is a beautifully balanced equation. You take the stone from here and you build with it over there. Yet the math immediately fails. No known ruins in the surrounding region, even those dating back thousands of years, show evidence of construction on a scale that would consume 1 million cubic meters of material. More critically, the stone used in local ancient architecture does not match the specific type of sandstone found in the caves. If a city built from this stone ever existed, it was either completely dismantled down to its last block, or it is buried so deeply that no trace remains. Both options stretch credulity. A second, more brutal explanation involves pulverization. Could the builders have crushed the excavated stone into gravel or sand for some other purpose? Perhaps for road building, for making mortar, or for some agricultural use we cannot guess. The process of manually crushing that much stone, however, would have required an additional, energy-intensive industry operating alongside the carving. It doubles the labor for no clear benefit, and again, where is the evidence? There are no vast, ancient fields of compacted gravel in Longyou County, no hidden valleys filled with 2,000-year-old sand. The material, if pulverized, seems to have been consumed or dispersed without leaving a single footprint in the landscape. This leads us to the third and most straightforward possibility. The rubble was simply carted away and dumped somewhere else. This is the default assumption for any large-scale excavation, but the scale makes it a nightmare of logistics. Picture the endless chain of laborers, each carrying baskets of rock up from the deepening pit, walking for miles to a dumping ground and returning empty-handed. The manpower required just for transport would have dwarfed the number of carvers. You would need dedicated roads, thousands of baskets or carts, and a dumping site vast enough to hold 1 million cubic meters of spoil. Such a site would be a landmark in itself, a permanent scar on the region. Yet no such dump has ever been found despite modern surveys and satellite imagery. It is as if the stone was loaded onto boats and sunk in a distant lake, or carried away piece by piece over such a vast distance that the pile was scattered into invisibility. Each explanation hits a wall. The vanished city has left no ruins. The pulverized stone has left no fields of sand. The transported rubble has left no giant mound. This missing debris is more than a puzzle. It is a direct challenge to our understanding of ancient labor and logistics. It tells us that the builders of Longyou possessed not only the skill to carve with precision, but also a masterful, almost eerie command over the aftermath of their work. They cleaned up after themselves so thoroughly that they erased the very evidence of their industry, leaving behind only the exquisite, empty spaces. The mountain was hollowed and the proof was swallowed by the earth. This silence above ground is as profound as the quiet within the caves. For a project of this staggering scale, the absence in China's vast historical records is not just a gap. It is a deafening void. Chinese civilization has one of the longest, most meticulous traditions of record-keeping in human history. Dynastic annals, local gazetteers, imperial inventories, and poetic works documented everything from grain harvests and tax levies to the construction of bridges, temples, and tombs. The digging of a major canal or the raising of a palace wall would generate reams of bureaucratic paperwork, yet for the Longyou caves there is nothing. No mention of a massive subterranean excavation in Zhejiang. No record of tens of thousands of laborers being conscripted for a generations-long project. Not even a cryptic line in a provincial history about strange sounds from beneath the ponds. This complete omission is in many ways more baffling than the caves themselves. How does a mountain being hollowed out simply escape the notice of history? Several possibilities emerge, each more intriguing than the last. The first is the concept of a state secret. Imagine a project so sensitive, so critical to the security or ideology of a ruling power, that its very existence was classified. Only a highly centralized, authoritarian state could enforce such silence. The workers would have been conscripted from faraway lands, kept isolated, and perhaps even silenced permanently upon the project's completion. The administrators and engineers involved would have been sworn to secrecy under penalty of death. In this scenario, the caves were not just hidden by water, they were hidden by policy, scrubbed from official documents and purged from local memory through sheer state power. This theory finds a shadowy parallel in the tomb of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang. Historical texts describe his monumental mausoleum and its terracotta army, but they also state that the artisans who built the tomb's inner chambers were sealed inside to protect its secrets. A state capable of that could certainly erase the paperwork for an underground complex. Yet, even state secrets have a way of leaking out over centuries. Whispers become legends. The complete erasure over 2 millennia suggests a secrecy of an even more absolute kind. This leads to a second, darker possibility: deliberate historical sabotage. What if the project was not a secret from the start, but became an embarrassment? A colossal undertaking by a rival kingdom or a deposed dynasty, something so associated with a failed regime that the victors systematically destroyed all records of it. After a conquest, it was common practice for a new emperor to burn the books and records of the old order, rewriting history to legitimize his own rule. If the caves were the pet project of a defeated rival, mentioning them would give credit to the enemy. It would be far easier to simply pretend they never existed, to let the ponds cover them and let the local people forget. The caves would then be a phantom limb of history, a place that caused so much pain or shame that the culture chose to amputate it from memory. Finally, we must confront the simplest and most radical explanation. The timeline. What if the Longyou caves are so profoundly ancient that they predate written history in China altogether? The earliest Chinese writing, the oracle bone inscriptions of the Shang dynasty, date to around 3,600 years ago. If the caves were carved 5,000 or even 8,000 years ago by a pre-literate society, there would be no written record to lose. Their builders would have had no system of writing to inscribe on the walls or to leave behind in archives. Their story would have been passed down orally, and over enough centuries, even the most resilient oral traditions can fracture and fade, especially after a major societal collapse, a migration, or a natural disaster. The caves would then be a relic from a silent age, a masterpiece from a time before history began to keep its own notes. Each of these explanations carries weight but also deep irony. The caves represent perhaps the greatest concentrated expenditure of human labor from their era, and yet that effort left no echo in the written word. They are a monument to a people whose name we may never know, whose purpose we can only guess at, and whose very existence was either too secret, too shameful, or too ancient to be remembered. This historical silence forces us to listen more closely to the stones themselves, for they may be the only chronicle we will ever have. The stones may be silent, but the people who live above them are not. In the villages surrounding the Longyou caves, a rich tapestry of oral history has been woven for generations, long before the water was pumped away. These are not the official records of emperors, but the living memory of a place, passed from elder to child in stories told by firelight. And within these local legends, we find whispers that seem to echo from the depths below. The most persistent and powerful figure in these tales is the dragon. For centuries, the local people referred to the area's peculiar, bottomless ponds as the dragon pools or the dragon waters. They believed these were not mere bodies of water, but sacred gateways to the subterranean palaces of the dragon kings, benevolent deities who controlled rain and rivers. The dragons were said to dwell in magnificent, jeweled halls deep within the earth, far grander than anything on the surface. It was considered extremely bad luck, even dangerous, to disturb these waters. To drain a dragon pool would be to invite calamity, drought, flood, or the wrath of the dragon itself. This deep-seated superstition is precisely why the caves remained hidden for so long. No one dared to challenge the old stories. When Wu Anai and the other villagers finally pumped the first pond dry in 1992, they were defying generations of taboo. Their initial fear upon seeing the carved steps was not just surprise, it was the chilling realization that the old myths might be terrifyingly real. They had not just found a hole, they had opened the dragon's door. This folklore provides a compelling cultural framework. Could the legend of the dragon's underwater palace be a folk memory, a story crafted to explain the inexplicable? People living for centuries above these hidden, man-made caverns, sensing a vast emptiness below their feet, might naturally mythologize it, the grandeur of the caves translated into the splendor of a dragon's lair. The fact that they were always full of water made them a natural domain for a water deity. The story preserved the truth of the cave's existence and sacred nature, while also enforcing the prohibition that kept them secret. Beyond dragons, there are other, more enigmatic fragments. Some very old local stories speak of a time when giants or ancient people inhabited the land, beings of great strength and skill who could shape mountains. These tales often describe them departing or going into the earth, leaving behind empty halls. Another strand of folklore hints at an underground kingdom, a mirrored world that existed in parallel to the one above, complete with its own sun and moon. These are classic mythological motifs found worldwide, but their presence here in this specific location feels significant. They sound like the distorted echoes of a real event, the arrival, the monumental labor, and the mysterious departure of a people who literally went into the earth, creating a kingdom in the stone. The place names themselves are clues. Longyou, the name of the county, can be translated as Dragon Tour or Dragon Journey. The names of specific ponds and hills in the area often contain characters for dragon, immortal, or cave. These are not coincidences, they are the landscape's own annotation, a map of meaning written not on paper, but in the very language used to describe the hills and waters. The folklore does not give us a builder's name or a precise date. What it gives us is something perhaps more valuable, the emotional and spiritual context. It tells us that for as long as anyone could remember, this place was felt to be special, powerful, and deeply other. The caves were not just unknown, they were known to be a mystery, a presence so potent it required a myth to contain it. The stories served as both a warning and a preservation order. keeping the secret safe under layers of awe and fear until the day the pumps arrived. So while historians search archives in vain, the true keepers of the cave's first secret were the grandmothers and fishermen, the ones who told children not to swim in the dragon's pool. In their whispers, we find the cave's oldest and most enduring record, not of how they were built, but of how it felt to live in their shadow for 2,000 years. The old stories whisper of dragons, but modern science listens with lasers. In the 21st century, the mystery of the Longyou caves is no longer just a subject for historians and folklorists. It has become a high-tech crime scene where teams of engineers, geologists, and archaeologists are deploying the latest tools to interrogate the silent stone, hoping it will finally confess its secrets. The investigation has moved from speculation to precise measurement, and the first tool in this new arsenal is breathtaking in its accuracy: three-dimensional laser scanning. Imagine a device that can fire millions of laser points per second, each one bouncing off a surface and returning with a precise measurement of distance. By sweeping these scanners throughout the caverns, researchers have created digital twins of the spaces, perfect three-dimensional models where every pillar, every wall, every single one of those countless chisel marks is mapped down to the millimeter. This is not just a fancy map. This digital replica allows scientists to perform analyses that would be impossible inside the physical cave. They can calculate volumes and surface areas with absolute precision, finally nailing down the exact scale of the removed material. They can analyze the angles of the walls and pillars to understand the structural engineering in minute detail. Most fascinatingly, they can study the tool marks themselves in ways the human eye never could, searching for patterns, variations, or signatures that might reveal different work crews or changes in technique over time. The laser scan is a frozen moment in digital form, a baseline of truth against which every future theory must be tested. It confirms beyond any doubt that the precision we feel when standing in the caves is not an illusion. It is a mathematical fact carved into the mountain with a consistency that borders on the obsessive, but the lasers can only see what is already exposed. The greater mystery may lie in what remains hidden. Are the 24 known caves truly isolated, or are they just the visible rooms of a much larger, connected labyrinth? To answer that, investigators turn to a technology that lets them see through solid earth: ground-penetrating radar. This system works like sonar for the ground, sending radio waves into the stone and listening for the echoes that bounce back from changes in density. A solid wall of bedrock returns one signal. An open cavity or a tunnel returns a very different one. By systematically sweeping the ground above and between the known caves, researchers are searching for the ghostly outlines of hidden chambers, sealed passageways, or even entire undiscovered caverns that have been completely cut off from the world. Every anomalous signal on the radar screen is a heartbeat of possibility. It could be a collapsed corridor that once linked Cave 5 to Cave 6. It could be a smaller, sealed storage room. Or, in the most thrilling scenario, it could be the signature of a central chamber, a grand hall that served as the heart of the entire complex, still waiting in perfect darkness. Ground-penetrating radar offers the tantalizing promise of revealing the full blueprint of this underground world, showing us not just the magnificent rooms we have found, but the connective tissue that gives them meaning. It is the search for the missing pieces of the floor plan, the hidden grammar of this stone sentence. Meanwhile, other scientists are asking the mountain itself what it remembers. Geological analysis goes beyond the shape of the caves to study the very substance they are made from. By taking core samples of the sandstone, experts can analyze its composition, its hardness, and how it would have responded to ancient tools. This helps them model the excavation process more accurately, estimating the types of chisels needed and the force required to make those iconic marks. They also study the site's hydrology, mapping the water table and underground streams to understand why these specific ponds never dried up. Was the water seal a deliberate part of the design, chosen to preserve the caves, or simply a fortunate geological accident? Crucially, geologists are also on the hunt for that million cubic meters of missing rubble. By analyzing soil layers and sediment deposits in the surrounding valleys and riverbeds, they look for traces of sandstone dust or distinctive mineral signatures that could point to where the excavated material was dumped or used. It is slow, meticulous work, sifting the landscape for the faintest chemical echo of that colossal act of removal. This convergence of technologies represents a profound shift. We are no longer just wondering about the Longyou caves, we are actively auditing them. The laser scanners are the forensic photographers, the ground-penetrating radar is the search warrant. The geological analysis is the background check. Each scan, each radar pulse, each soil sample is a question posed to the past with tools the builders could never have conceived. And while these methods have not yet yielded a smoking gun, a dated artifact, a clear inscription, or a definitive map of hidden chambers, they are systematically eliminating guesses and tightening the circle of possibility. They are building a scaffold of hard data around the mystery, a framework strong enough to eventually support the truth. The story of Longyou is no longer frozen in stone. It is being gently, patiently teased apart by the quiet hum of machines and the focused curiosity of those who refuse to let such a magnificent question go unanswered. The silence of Longyou is not an isolated phenomenon. Around the world, across continents and cultures, humanity has repeatedly turned to the earth, carving out hidden spaces for survival, worship, or secrecy. By placing these Chinese caverns alongside other global mysteries, their singular nature comes into even sharper focus. Take, for example, the ancient underground city of Longyou in Turkey. Discovered in the 1960s, this is a labyrinth carved into soft volcanic rock, reaching depths of over 80 meters and capable of housing up to 20,000 people. It is a masterpiece of communal defense, complete with living quarters, stables, churches, and even ventilation shafts. Its purpose is clear. It was a refuge, a place where entire communities could vanish from invaders for months at a time. The Barabar caves in India, carved over 2,300 years ago, present another fascinating parallel. These are among the oldest surviving rock-cut caves in the country, known for their incredibly polished interior walls that gleam like glass. Their purpose was largely monastic, serving as retreats for ascetic sects. The precision of their finish is breathtaking, but the spaces themselves are relatively small, designed for meditation, not for grand assembly. Then there are the Khu Khai tunnels of Vietnam, a sprawling network used during wartime as supply routes, living quarters, and traps. Their genius lies in adaptation and concealment, a pragmatic response to immediate threat. Each of these sites reveals a powerful, universal human impulse. When faced with danger, the need for spiritual retreat, or the demands of conflict, we go to ground. We burrow, we hide, we create worlds beneath the world. Yet when you hold Longyou against these other wonders, its anomalies scream. Longyou is a functional warren, its corridors cramped and its rooms pragmatic. Barabar's polish is exquisite, but its chambers are intimate. Khu Khai is a feat of desperate ingenuity. Longyou does not fit these molds. Its scale is not about housing thousands of people. Its 30-meter ceilings and 2,000 square meter floors are absurdly vast for simple habitation. Its precision is not just about smooth walls. It is about acoustic tuning, astronomical alignment, and a geometric perfection that serves no obvious defensive or monastic need. The other sites answer the question, why? They were built for protection, for prayer, for war. Longyou, in stark contrast, guards its purpose with an almost defiant silence. It has the scale of a city but the emptiness of a temple. It has the precision of a royal tomb but lacks any burial. It feels engineered for a specific, profound experience, an experience we can no longer access. The most striking common theme is not the act of digging, but the act of vanishing. Longyou was forgotten for centuries. The builders of Barabar left few records. The Kukai tunnels were a secret meant to be kept. Longyou takes this to its ultimate extreme. It is not just a forgotten place. It is a place that seems to have been designed to be forgotten, sealed underwater and scrubbed clean of all artifacts. This global pattern suggests something fundamental about our species. We are not just builders of monuments that scrape the sky. We are also creatures who inscribe our deepest fears and highest aspirations into the bedrock itself. We create these hidden counterworlds, and then, often, we walk away from them, letting the earth slowly reclaim the memory. Longyou stands at the far end of this spectrum. It represents the most extreme, most refined, and most mysterious expression of this ancient urge. It is not merely an underground structure. It is a philosophical statement in stone, a question mark carved so deeply into the planet that, while we can now stand in its void, we still cannot hear the echo of the answer. The dragon's door is now open to the world. After millennia of perfect isolation, the Longyou caves have become a destination, a must-see wonder on the tourist trail. Visitors from across China and the globe now walk the same smooth steps the villagers first saw in 1992, their voices and footsteps replacing the ancient silence with a new human hum. This access is a triumph of discovery, a chance for everyone to witness a miracle of human history. But with every visitor who gasps at the soaring ceilings, a new and modern threat quietly enters with them. Preservation has collided with popularity, and the caves now face a danger their builders could never have anticipated: us. The very act of sharing this wonder risks its slow, steady degradation. The primary enemy is something we all carry: our breath. Each person exhales moisture and carbon dioxide. In a sealed, underground environment, that moisture has nowhere to go. It accumulates in the air, raising the humidity, and eventually condenses on the cold stone surfaces. Over time, this persistent dampness can promote the growth of microorganisms, algae, or lichen on the pristine sandstone. Those magnificent, uniform chisel marks, the site's most important archaeological feature, could slowly be obscured by a biological film. The increased carbon dioxide can also subtly alter the chemistry of the cave environment, potentially affecting the stone in ways we do not yet fully understand. Then there is the physical wear. While walkways and railings protect the main floors, the constant circulation of people changes the cave's microclimate. Dust from clothing and skin is introduced. The heat from bodies and lighting systems can create minor thermal fluctuations. Even the vibrations from countless footsteps, though faint, are a new form of energy entering a system that knew only stillness. This is the central dilemma of modern archaeology. Do we keep such places sealed, studied only by specialists in controlled environments, preserving them perfectly for a future that may have better technology? Or do we believe their value is in their inspiration, that the awe they spark in a child or the curiosity they trigger in a visitor is worth the calculated risk? For Longyou, the choice has been made. The caves are open. The question now is how to manage the consequences. The solution lies in a delicate, constant dance of monitoring and control. Environmental sensors now track humidity, temperature, and carbon dioxide levels in real time. Visitor numbers are strictly limited and timed. Specialized lighting is designed to minimize heat output. The goal is not to stop change entirely, which is impossible, but to slow it to a glacial pace, to manage the new atmosphere as carefully as a museum conservator would handle a fragile painting. This is the cave's new chapter. It survived the water, the silence, and the weight of forgotten centuries. Its latest test is our presence, our desire to stand in that grandeur and for a moment touch the mystery. The challenge is to ensure that in sharing it with the present, we do not rob the future of its chance to finally understand. The mystery does not shrink with study. It expands. Every answer we chase seems to dissolve into two more questions. a fractal puzzle where each solved piece reveals a deeper layer of enigma. The core questions stand like silent pillars in the dark, waiting. Who built this? We have no name, no dynasty, no cultural fingerprint left in the stone. Were they a lost kingdom, a secretive cult, a workforce conscripted by an emperor so powerful he could erase their memory? The identity of the architects remains a total blank. When was it done? The timeline stretches from a plausible 2,200 years ago to a bafflingly recent few centuries. Without a single datable artifact, the caves float in a chronological void, untethered from the history we know. Why does it exist? Every proposed purpose collapses under scrutiny. A quarry would not be so beautifully finished. A tomb holds no bodies. A bunker lacks any storage. A temple has no altars. The grand design hints at a function we have perhaps lost the capacity to even imagine. How was it achieved? The logistics of removing 1 million cubic meters of stone with hand tools is a nightmare of physics and manpower. The precision of the acoustics and geometry suggests a knowledge of engineering principles that feels anachronistic. With what tools? The uniform chisel marks suggest a lost technology, perhaps a specialized tool that turned artistic carving into a repeatable industrial process. We have not found it, and our replicas only prove how agonizingly slow the work would have been without it. Where is the debris? The missing mountain of rubble is the ghost in the machine. 1 million cubic meters of sandstone did not vanish into thin air. Its absence is a physical impossibility that haunts every logistical model. And why are there no records? In a civilization famed for its meticulous chronicles, the silence is a roar. Was it a state secret so dark it was purged, a project so ancient it predates writing? Or something so culturally insignificant to the powers above that it was never deemed worth mentioning? Each of these questions is a locked door, and every time a researcher thinks they have found a key, like the acoustic properties or the southeast alignment, it only opens into another hallway lined with more doors. The investigation is alive. Teams are still on site, scanning with ground-penetrating radar, analyzing soil samples for traces of that vanished debris, and delicately monitoring the cave's environment. A new chamber could be discovered tomorrow. A core sample might finally yield a pollen grain that can be dated. The story is not over. It is waiting in the quiet dark for the next clue to emerge. Perhaps the greatest power of the Longyou caves is their silence. They do not whisper clues or offer partial answers. They present a perfect, polished void, a colossal question mark carved in stone. This is why the mystery captivates us so deeply, beyond the engineering marvels or the historical puzzle. It taps into a fundamental human drive, the need to solve, to complete the story, to fill in the blank page. Our brains are wired for pattern recognition, and when faced with a pattern as deliberate as these caves, we cannot help but try to write the narrative that surrounds it. The caves are a direct, physical challenge to our entire understanding of the past. They stand there, undeniable and immense, and they tell us our timeline is incomplete. Our textbooks, our chronologies, our family trees of civilization, all feel suddenly provisional when confronted by a work of this scale that has no name, no date, and no clear reason for being. It is an itch in the mind that cannot be scratched, and that very frustration is what keeps us coming back, generation after generation, theory after theory. We are not just studying a cave, we are grappling with the limits of our own knowledge. This blank page is so compelling because we are the ones who must write on it. Every culture, every researcher, every curious visitor looks into that darkness and sees a reflection of their own worldview. The engineer sees a logistical triumph and puzzles over the vanished rubble. The archaeologist sees a missing chapter and searches for a single potsherd. The mystic sees a dragon's lair or a message from the stars. The caves become a mirror. We project our understandings of technology, our myths of lost worlds, our fears of forgotten cataclysms onto those smooth, silent walls. The emptiness is a canvas, and we cannot resist painting it with the colors of our own imagination. This is not a weakness in our thinking. It is a testament to the power of the sight. It forces us to engage, to create, to wonder. But beneath all these projections lies a truly haunting possibility, the core allure of Longyou. What if our best theories are still wrong? What if a civilization capable of this, with its acoustic architecture, its celestial alignment, its industrial-level stonework, could rise, achieve such mastery, and then vanish so completely that we can only stare at the hollow shell of their achievement? This idea unsettles the very foundation of history, which is often a story of linear progress. We assume that knowledge accumulates, that technologies evolve and are passed down. Longyou suggests a terrifying alternative, that a society can reach a zenith of skill and understanding, and then that light can be utterly extinguished, leaving no spark for the future. Their brilliance becomes a dead end, a closed loop in time known only to the mountain that once housed them. This possibility is what gives the caves their profound emotional weight. They are not just a mystery, they are a memento mori for civilizations, a reminder that even the grandest human endeavors are fragile against the vast, silent sweep of time. We look into that abyss and wonder, if our own world ended tomorrow, what single, indestructible marvel would we leave behind for some future people to find? And would they understand it any better than we understand these silent, waiting halls? From a simple act of draining a village pond, we have journeyed into the heart of a global enigma. We have stood beneath ceilings as high as a 10-story building, traced the ghostly rhythm of countless chisel marks, and felt the weight of 1,000,000 cubic meters of vanished stone. We have listened to a silence so profound it seems to swallow sound, yet one perfectly tuned to carry a whisper across a vast, dark hall. The Longyou caves are a symphony of contradictions, a masterpiece of engineering with no engineer, a city-sized space with no citizens, a historical fact with no history. They are a monument to human ingenuity that simultaneously questions the very timeline of that ingenuity. This is not a puzzle missing a few pieces. It is a puzzle where we are still assembling the edges, unsure of the final picture's size or shape. The scale overwhelms, the precision humbles, and the silence resonates louder than any answer we have yet found. They stand, and will likely stand for millennia more, as a monumental question mark carved directly into the living rock of our planet. They are a permanent reminder that our understanding of the past is not a closed book, but a manuscript with missing chapters, written in a language we have only begun to decipher. The story does not end here beneath these ponds in China. It continues wherever curiosity lives. What do you think these silent halls were meant for? Share your own theories in the comments below, and if you are captivated by the hidden corners of our world, subscribe to keep exploring the mysteries buried just beneath the surface of our everyday lives. For now, as you go about your day, remember the ground beneath your feet is not always solid history. Sometimes it is a thin layer of soil and time, covering wonders we have yet to imagine.